Welcome back, everybody. Our next guest needs no introduction. Ada Hegerberg is a superstar in global football. She left home in Norway when she was 17 to become a professional player. Went first to Germany and then to Lyon in 2014, where she is now. They are the superstars themselves of the women's club game, having won the last 5 Champions Leagues. She has scored 282 goals in 272 games so far in her career, and she's only 24. She was the recipient of the first ever women's Ballon d'Or in 2018, and she scored a famous hat-trick in the Champions League final last year in 19 minutes. Ada, it is such a pleasure for us to have you here today with 20 by 20 and KPMG.
A pleasure being a part of this as well. Great initiative, and I think we have a lot of interesting subjects to talk about.
We should first talk about you and how are you, because not only were you hit by a lockdown like everybody else and separated from your loved ones, but you tore your cruciate in January, so you've been rehabbing and then had lockdown. Tell us about that.
What a year for all of us, first of all. It's been a challenge personally, but it's been a great challenge. I've grown so much as an athlete and as a person this year, and currently doing very well. Just finished a session, and everything's going to the right direction. So I'm just very positive and giving it all to come back at the highest level again.
We have a phrase with 20 by 20, which is can't see, can't be. Did you dream about being a professional football when you were little, and who were your heroes?
To be honest, I didn't actually dream about being a pro footballer because it didn't exist when I was younger. But that's what's changing today, I guess. I think young girls growing up today can actually dream about becoming pro one day, which wasn't the case maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So I just love playing football, and as much as I grew and took those small steps, I saw a future in it, and I just went all in when I decided to go pro. So my mom's been a hero for me. I always looked up to independent, strong women, and always get inspired by that today as well. Serena Williams has been one, and I think it's important to have, especially for young girls, to have a woman to look up to and to kind of like find themselves in idols, which is very important to have inspiration to reach your dreams one day.
And while you may have not seen women as professional footballers, both of your parents were coaches. Your older sister, Adrienne, was also and is also a professional footballer. She's playing with Roma in Serie A. So you had what you describe as kick-ass women in your life.
I literally had no choice rather than playing football, to be honest. But I've grown up in an equality family, you could say. I've been very important of the equality term. Had a strong mom in the house. We joke around and call her the dad in the house sometimes. Practical joke there, but we never asked ourselves questions or put boundaries on ourselves by being girls, for example. And that basically I got from my mom and dad. I think it's very important to have people around you who influence you in terms of your education. I think change also comes by education. So I've been very lucky to grow up in a family that has supported me, even though if I'm a girl or whatever, they always told me to go chase my dreams.
And your dad worked very hard with you on your technique, and he perfected this sort of thing where you did really quality in sessions, and it actually came back to pay off in that famous hat-trick in the Champions League in a way, didn't it?
It did, because the story is quite funny, because one of the goals I scored in the Champions League final is something that I've been training on since I was 11, and it basically shows that hard work and commitment pays off. It's not a cliche, it's a reality. And it's like you said, quality is such an important factor in this. Everything you do, you need to have full concentration in order to do it with the best quality possible. And this comes with years and years of training. And that's why I try to tell others, youngsters who are gonna kick me out of the spot one day, is that success comes from repetition and focus on quality.
The significance of the Ballon d'Or in 2018, I got the feeling at the time that it was significant for you, but not because you won it.
I mean, the whole night was significant for the game. Ballon d'Or is such an historical, prestigious award, and being a part of it as a woman, the women's game, is a very important step. Even though if it's an individual award, it's just like a symbol. I think France football kind of like showed the path a little bit, and you need like big actors to come up on the stage and kind of pave the way for the women, especially in sports. And that's why I was very like I was pumped and I was very proud. I don't use that proud word that often, but that night I was very proud because I felt that I represented the whole game. And it's just a good example on a little thing that can change a lot of attitudes as well.
And the DJ who was presenting it at the time famously asked you if you could twerk. And I wonder now, how do you look back on that? It became a huge story outside of football.
Yeah, I'm trying to get him to do me a favor and to DJ in my wedding one day, but I'm waiting to reach out to him. I still got that favor to use, so we'll see.
But it actually, I think, brought women's football to a stage accidentally that it may not have reached.
I mean, I think people just were on the toes, and I think that you can look at it in a positive aspect as well. Would we have reacted on that many years ago? I don't know. It was very unfortunate for the whole program, for the whole night. Obviously, I was very focused on the whole award and tried to kind of like focus on the right things. But people were staying on their toes and thought that this wasn't good enough, because we were there to celebrate the performances, the football, and basically the question was completely taken out of the subject. So it was very unfortunate for every parties in this example, but it also shows that there are big examples that still happen that shouldn't happen.
A year later, the Women's World Cup, a record-breaking Women's World Cup in every respect, took place, but you weren't there. You opted not to play for Norway. Why was that?
Well, the World Cup wasn't basically in my mind when I took this decision. I knew all the consequences behind a decision like that, and I think in life, it's very important to know yourself, know your values, and where you want to head, in order not to lose yourself on the road, because the road is very bumpy, especially when you're have high ambitions. And at some point, I needed to take a decision in order to move on in my career, but also as a person. There were things I didn't accept. And in order to move on in life, you need to take tough decisions. And it's much, much easier also to take tough decisions when you know your values and what you stand for. So obviously, World Cup in France wasn't in my head when I took that decision, but that's also part of the consequences.
And after you took that decision, Norway gave parity, I think, of payment to their women's and men's team. But it wasn't about, I take it that it wasn't about money, because you still didn't go back. So what experiences did you have that informed your decision?
Well, it's been a lot of written about my case, quitting the national team, and it's been quite a sensible theme, you could say. It's been a tough thing for many parts, and it's also been very messy in the media, which is very unfortunate. But it's not all about money when you talk about equality or equal terms. It's also about being respected for the work you put down, even though if you're a woman or a man, to be respected for the athlete you are, but also the person you are. And there were things that I didn't accepted, on terms of being the person I was, on the terms of being a woman with ambitions. And I didn't think the bar was set as high as it should be. I think the girls and women at our level deserved more. And when I tried to have an impact on that, it didn't work either. And I need to kind of like stay low or try to change myself as a person and a player. And then in my world, it doesn't work in order to compete on the highest level if you need to change yourself and your character. And you're ambitious. So it was easy. It was a tough choice, but an easy one in the end as well.
It was a big sacrifice, I imagine, for you, but you seem to be unafraid to make those hard decisions on behalf of other women and for the long-term goal, if you like, of your sport. It reminds me of Megan Rapinoe's line about women in sport needing to throw down their ladders to others.
Very important to have as much strong voices you can have together. I think if each and every one of us stand up and use it for the good, I mean, I think we all want our sports to be left in better hands than what we found it in. And this is a very important thing to say as well, is that you can't have an impact on your sport if you don't perform either. And that's why performance is always key in my head. I'm a footballer, not a politician, but as long as you perform and push the level every day, you can also have an impact on the sport by using your voice as well. If you don't perform, you don't have that voice. So it's kind of like a circle that goes around. But I think we have a lot of responsibility to speak up when we have that spotlight and when you have that performance level. So it's a tricky balance, but it's all about using it for the good.
It's a particularly tricky balance, I think, sometimes for women in sport. Tell us, what does the word is it janteloven? Am I pronouncing it wrong? Janteloven in Norwegian mean? I think we have something similar in Ireland.
Yeah, I think you find the janteloven everywhere, to be honest, not only in Norway. You have it a little bit in every country, maybe not in the US. And janteloven is basically don't think that you're better than anyone. Like, it's basically based on people being at the same line, which you have a lot of positive from that as well, like a very democratic look at something. But I think you need to have the best of both worlds, to be honest. I've been in Germany, I got the experience there, and I've been in France, which is completely different. So I think it's all about learning from each and every culture, and of course be based on the democratic and homogeneous side of a society, but also let the individual create and go all in for the dreams, you could say, and believe in themselves.
We have a similar thing here. It's called notions. You know, nobody should get above their station. You know, you should never big yourself up too much. But is that do you see that that's sometimes a problem in women's sport? We don't big ourselves up enough.
Oh, for sure. That's a big problem in women's sport. And you also should be very careful about talking about it as well, because if you talk about it, you also will get that stamp of being, because every statement that I want to bring out is not a statement or a mood, you could say. You don't want to irritate people. You just want to tell them the truth. And that's basically the truth. And being a woman speaking up for what you believe in and equality is a very tricky thing as well. And there are a lot of people who don't, who might feel offended almost by women speaking up.
You've managed to do something that's very rare in women's team sport, which is that you were with one sponsor and then another sponsor, a very big company, came in last year and signed a huge individual sponsorship with you. What responsibility do you feel that sponsors have, and how can sponsorship help in creating this visibility and respect for women in sport?
Well, that's why I was very, very motivated and pumped when Nike got on to the pitch and started talking about a potential sponsorship. And I was on from day one, because I feel that Nike has been leading the way in terms of creating the community for women, for paving the way for equality as well. Focusing on women athletes or on performance level, but also inclusion, you could say. And it's like what I said earlier, when big organizations who have power pave the way and show that equality is a modern thing in our daily life, I think that's going to open and change a lot of attitudes as well. So being a part of Nike was obviously the perfect fit. and I really wanted to be a part of that. And that's kind of like where my role get in with Nike as well, to get more attention to women's athletes and women's sports. And when you think about it, how many women do you have in this world doing sports? Obviously, there's a need for it. And the more organizations that get onto the road, the more people really will realize that this is completely normal.
And at Lyon, they're regarded as a sort of a model for women's club football, that they do things well, that they respect and show equality to their women players as well as their men. What have you seen at Lyon that demonstrates that shows it's not just lip service, if you like?
I think it's very important when you want to have a product in the end to focus on giving the best conditions possible. I mean, the conditions needs to meet the expectations. That's a very important phrase, and that's what we have here in Lyon. We have a president that believed in us from day one. He was patient. We didn't have a locker room 11 years ago. Now we have perfect conditions with the perfect pitches. And basically what you ask for is having a good pitch in order to perform, to have your locker room, to have your equipment, to feel like a pro, to feel respected. And you need to have everything in place in order to create a good product. So it's kind of like a circle. And basically 11 years after, he has maybe the best team in the history of the women's game. So the question they need to ask themselves, especially the clubs, is what value could it bring to a club to invest in a women's section and invest in it in a long term, not just to have to say that they have a women's section.
And the last World Cup, again, as I said, broke records, and we're seeing major championships, Champions League finals, all the big events now in women's football, breaking records, getting records. But what do you think is the key to getting a bigger regular audience all the time for women's sport, which would have a knock-on effect for sponsorship and everything else?
I think we all have a part in it. If I knew the answer, I hope you would give me the answer on that, to be honest.
I wish.
But I think that everyone has a responsibility in this. The media, the players, the federations, UEFA and FIFA. You can see that in all big tournaments like the Euros and the World Cup, the momentum is so high and the interest is there, but it's all about keeping that interest all year long, getting people to get to the games. You have the best players gather in great football clubs, and you get good club football every weekend. So it's all about creating a momentum that is alive all year long. How do we get there? I think I always try to look at ourselves. Like, we need to continue to perform. We can't always push for better rights if we don't continue to develop our sports. So we also need to look ourselves in the mirror. How can we train even harder? How can we train even smarter and stay out of that comfort zone in order to give the best product possible? But in order to get there, we also need the conditions for it, and more women need more professional club life. And we still there's still a long way to get there, but it's starting, and that's why we need to push for the momentum and to keep it alive.
So today is the culmination of 20 by 20, and we're asking everybody to take this baton for social change, to change the culture of sport. What question do you think you want to ask us to do all of that?
A question that I keep asking myself is basically what more can be done for the product to be better from the start, and especially in my world, where can clubs start to improve the general level? And it all comes down to giving young girls the same opportunities from day one as the young boys get, and in terms of competence, getting the right pitches, and being taken seriously. I think the most important thing is to take these young girls seriously as well, and let them dream and let them work out and put the same demands for them as you do for young boys. And it basically says itself, like, if you start to teach a 6-year-old girl how to hit a pass rather than doing when she's 20, the product also will be a lot different. So starting from the basics from day one is something that we need to put more awareness about, and I think that can change a whole lot of great deal in the long term.
Well, that's really given us food for thought. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure and a privilege, and we really hope to see you back on the pitch soon, because we can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you for having me. You have a lot of kick-ass women here today, so I'm very honored to be a part of it.
Great.